Alrighty, we have defeated the tree, broken the elder, slapped the snake, and defeated the fairy whimsy dickheads. Now, let's actually fight a real boss. A real boss. This boss actually is pretty decent in terms of a, honestly, early to mid raid boss mechanics-wise, and is somewhat difficult, right, for the general player base, right? This is going to be a more difficult fight for many people. There are a lot of mechanics in this fight. I'm only going to talk about the mechanics specific to what I am doing. I will not talk about the hose, because melee DPS should not be dealing with the hose at all. So, for Larodar, we are going to be running our multi-target AoE cleave, and there are adds in the fight. There are specifically probably two. You're not realistically going to get the third. Actually, you might actually no. There's probably realistically 2 or 3 of the ad sets at the start you need to kill to make sure the trees spawn or the trees die quickly. But we'll get into that as we get into the VOD. This is the build we are going to run for Mr. Larodar. On our opener, we want to use our... So here on our opener, we want to use our Odin's Fury Recklessness combo, but you want to save your potion. You can use your potion on the opener as well if you want, but you want to use your... you want to save your Avatar Roar for when the ads spawn. You want to have your cleave stacked up and ready to go, but you want to pop your potion and then be ready to slam these ads as quick as possible. It is kind of pad, but at the same time, the faster you kill these ads, the faster they're able to go to the middle and heal up the seed, and then that lets your other raiders help clear the room. Now, here's how we dealt with this debuff. This is how you should deal with the debuff. But essentially, when you get this igniting growth, if you're standing out in the middle here like this, you're going to spawn fire underneath you. So what you want to do is be closer to the edge, and then if you're closer to the edge, you'll spawn less fire, and you're going to be spawning fire away from the middle. It doesn't last very long. There are going to be multiple times in this fight where you are going to be not able to hit the boss. Most tanks are pulling out the boss out into the fire to reduce the amount of damage the charge does. So there'll be times you're not going to be able to hit this boss. That's just how it is. Don't worry too much about it, right? Now here is the other mechanic. The boss, let me make sure I'm at the highest quality because, yeah, kind of messy. The boss is going to spawn these blazing thorns, and every single area of thorn has a fire orb coming in. Depending on when you're assigned to soak an orb, you'll be assigned to soak kind of near an area of where the boss is, and you'll need to get that orb. Otherwise, it gives the boss a big damage buff, and no, you don't want that, right? Nobody wants that. Other than that, the seed people, someone will be targeted by these searing brambles, and the seed people will make the brambles able to be hit. And your job is to kill these brambles as much as you can. Our team is pretty adept at finishing off this fight very quickly. So I'm just main targeting the boss to keep my frenzy stacks up for parsing reasons. But 99% of the time, the moment these brambles spawn, you charge over and you start beating the shit out of them. Once again, this flower formation spawns, and at each tip an orb spawn. If you see an orb about to go in, as a Fury Warrior with a defensive, we can survive too. So if you actually see an orb about to go in, even if you're not assigned, feel free to just go soak it. Make sure the boss doesn't get that debuff, alleviate the amount of damage on your raid coming in. Once again, this is another one of those times where, hey man, you're just not going to be allowed to hit the boss. A lot of the time, because of that igniting growth movement I talked about, where you're spreading fire and you want to be as close to the edge as possible, I just stand in the front with the tanks. Because I want to be moving with the boss with the tanks, because if I'm behind the boss, yeah, I might get parried a little bit, but if I'm behind the boss, I'm going to be walking through the fire that everybody in the front is leaving. So that's the way I look at it, at least. See, the boss got 2 stacks here. He's going into his Raging Inferno. Once the tree is spawned, you stand in the tree so you don't die. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? Now here is where, once again, we want to hold our cooldowns. You can just send it for boss damage, but I don't recommend it. The ads need to die, so the boss is going to charge, then he's going to come back, the ads are going to spawn. The ad spawn is based on your raid's positioning. They do spawn on people, so if you have people in the middle of nowhere just doing whatever, tell them to get the fuck up to the boss to spawn everything in range so your melee can cleave them down as efficiently as possible. One thing to note as well to be a little careful of, every time these ads melee, they put a dot on you. That does a decent amount of damage. So if you're popping stuff like I am the moment they spawn, be wary you're going to be taking extra ticking damage from the dot that these things apply. But otherwise, there's 2 phases. There's this phase where you kill the trees and then try not to spread the fire as much as possible. And then there's phase 2. This phase is going to repeat itself over and over and over again. When the roots spawn, your job is to kill the roots. But otherwise, a lot of this fight is dependent on your hose people doing what they're supposed to do, and dependent on you not spreading as much fire as possible. Our overall agent, you can see here, where all of these spots of fire are because people are not just following the edge of the fire, they're doing whatever. It's not that big of a deal for us, but it can be problematic as you're doing prog. So here it is very important that the roots need to die as fast as possible. So this time I actually, instead of cleaving off the boss, we just main targeted it. There's not much to talk about. It's going to be the same for phase 1 and phase 2. One thing I died to during prog, actually, that you need to be careful of is the edge of this fire. The way damage works with ground effects like this is the moment you step into them, you take damage. But because of the mechanics we're dealing with, where the fire is spreading incrementally, what you do not want to do in this fight is stutter step. Because if you're here, and the fire is here, and the fire is growing, right? If you're stutter stepping, you step out, fire, step out, fire, step out, fire. One time, I took within 0.3 seconds, 3 individual ticks of the ground effect, and it killed me. Because I was stutter stepping my way out of the fire as it was growing, and I was taking an individual application of the damage every single time. If you stand still in the fire as it's growing, it only does 1 tick of damage every second. So if you take the tick of damage and do a decent sized move, you're not going to take that double, triple, quad, whatever ticks of damage in those small incremental movements if you stutter step on the edge of the fire. This is definitely a fight where you do not want to stutter step. You want to make actual full decent movements out of these ground effects because of how they expand and because how it calculates and adds damage to your character. It will kill you. It killed me on our first kill. Straight up, just absolutely tanked from taking 3 to, I think it was 3 ticks of the fire damage in an unreasonable amount of time. Once again, our AoE CDs line up with the next ad set. So get your whirlwind pre-prepped and ready to go. Use your avatar roar and kill the ads. Depending on your damage, these ads technically don't matter. I'm just padding right here. Depending on your damage, when you push the boss at 35%, you will not actually... Those ads will essentially kill themselves. So you don't have to worry about them. However, I padded. So, haha. Pad. Once again, our fire is kind of terrible. We're pushing and we didn't clear. But one thing that is interesting about how the last phase effects work is that the smaller area you have, it does technically mean you have less area if you're not CCing the ads correctly, but it also means that all of the mechanics are going to spawn in a smaller radius for people doing soaks and stuff like that. Another thing to note about this consuming flame damage, you want to make sure you're backpedaling off the boss as you're hitting it, because if you're actually within the 3-yard range underneath the boss, you're going to be taking double ticks of damage, and it actually does quite a bit if you're standing too close to the boss. So you want to be basically kind of near max melee range while this effect is going on. Otherwise, you don't want to take additional damage that you don't need to. Now, going into this last phase, there's only going to be a couple things you need to look out for. The ranged DPS, you see these soaks on the ground, like this orb right here at the bottom of my screen, and there's a circle there. Those soaks is mainly going to be a ranged and healer mechanic. You need to stay on the boss to keep doing damage. But the boss is going to do a frontal AoE. Do not be in the frontal. It will kill you. But worse than killing you, it's going to give you it gives people this circle. This circle, what it does is it means you can't be healed, but to get health, you have to steal it from other people. What your tank should not do, like you see my tank, how he dips into the raid, heals up to full, and then dips back out. If your tank just walks over and AFKs in your raid, if you guys don't have a ton of execute damage in this last phase, your tank is going to rot your entire melee group to death with this dot that gets put on you over and over and over again as it's siphoning health to the tank. So please, for the melee and for the tanks, a little bit of that extra damage is fine, but don't AFK in your melee. The other mechanic you're getting is that you saw a bunch of people got circles put over their heads. These are essentially small little bombs that when they are finished, they'll do damage in an AoE. So you just run out, get those out of the raid. You have to sacrifice damage, you gotta sacrifice damage. It sucks, but it is what it is. The tanks will be alternating. See, our other tank got the debuff, and they're going to be alternating having this damage. But because of how it times out, and because of this phase, you're not really going to actually be able to lose the stack of this dot damage. So if your tank just AFKs on you, and you take a ton of damage off this, depending on how much damage your raid is doing, you're honestly just not going to be able to kill the fight, because everyone is just going to eventually be rotting from this ticking dot as your tank is AFK in the group. But other than that, there is some pad you can do. These Ashen Treants should come in, and then they drop fire as they walk in. Most of the time, everybody's going to have a way to just CC them. You're going to have a lot of CC ready for these things. But if they do get in close enough, you can pad your little heart out. Little pad, pad, pad. Another thing to note is you see, so these are the soak circles. One thing I've noticed is because of the playroom you're playing in most of the time, these fire tornadoes that the boss spawn really like to overlap these circles. They really do. So in these circle sets, you want to be in them at the last second, because a lot of the time the tornadoes will come through and knock you out. Like, we had a couple of wipes to tornadoes coming in and knocking people out of these soaks, and then they would die. But we killed it at about the 530 mark. Most guilds are going to kill it probably around the 6 to 630 mark. If you use your potion on... once again, talking about cooldowns, if you use your potion at the start of the encounter, you'll get one more use towards the end of the encounter here. But otherwise, it is don't spread. Otherwise, our job is to kill the ads. Don't spread the fire by staying near the edge. Sometimes you're not going to be able to hit, and kill the roots. It is a very simple job. We don't have to deal with much. We don't have to deal with the seed. We don't have to deal with the hose, triple stack, none of that crap. All we do is we hit the boss, don't die to the ground effect, kill the roots, kill the ads. Big chillin', big easy for us. In terms of trinkets for this fight, I would just basically recommend your best single target trinkets that you have. The ads don't matter nearly enough for you to warrant running AoE trinkets, and they don't last nearly long enough for that to be the case either. As far as parsing is concerned, on the VOD I showed you here, I got a 98 with 233k DPS. I did not get AUG evokered. I got AUG evokered a little bit, but otherwise the fight is very controllable once you get used to it. The people running the hose are going to have some time taken to get used to how this fight is going to go. So you'll have a little bit of prog as everybody kind of gets the kinks worked out with that kind of stuff. But as long as you're doing your job, which is not spreading the fire, killing the roots, killing the ads, getting in boss damage, you're going to be A-okay and just keep doing what you're doing. It's not a very difficult fight for us as melee, but it is pretty fun. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.